because so now you can go on a That's right. This is it. This is the last thing I will teach you in 6th grade. Whoops, sorry, Madonna. And unfortunately, it's not on the best topic because, as I said, it's on the Black Death. But you have made it. Your holiday is coming for a majority of you because you've done your work. It's in, it's done. There's nothing else coming. Get a sigh, big, or breathe, or you just get relief, okay? It's summer. Summer's on its way. Last thing, like I said, we're going to talk about Black Death. One of the, not nice things that happen during the Middle Ages. One of the things that many of you, again, may have known about or heard about. If you want to read about the Black Plague, the Black Death, the bubonic plague, all the same thing, you'll find those on pages 696 to 699. I'm going to be adding in a slideshow. That's kind of what I'm looking at, just so you can understand what this was, the effect it had, and a major effect it's going to have on the Middle Ages. Okay? So, the bubonic plague starts in the year 1347. We didn't quite talk about the 100 Years' War. It was the war against England and France. It literally did last like 100 years. Joan of Arc was part of the French soldier, or was a French soldier who was in the 100 Years' War, if you read about her. But this is kind of what's been going on. And we get this deadly infection that is known as the bubonic plague, and later known as the Black Death or the Black Plague. So it all means the same thing. Kind of like medieval times, Middle Ages, and the Dark Ages kind of all talk about the same thing. That's it. How did it spread? The unfortunate thing is, as you were putting in the positives of the Crusades, we know that it opened the Europeans' eyes to a wider world. It brought back a lot of trade from the East. We reopened trade routes that had been closed for some time. Money is coming in. These Europeans are getting spices and silks and perfumes and jewelry. They're living a good life. And yet this is ultimately what causes the Black Plague. It started in Central Asia, and then it slowly moves its way west on these trade routes before reaching Europe. You know, that wheel of fortune that you read about, how things were good, and then they believed like there could be a spin. Well, this is the spin. Things got better after the Crusades. I mean, again, we talked about not the killing of people just because they didn't believe exactly what the church said. But the good things that were coming back, knowledge and trade and money, they were on that high, and then the Wheel of Fortune. Isn't that one of those TikTok things? But anyway, the Wheel of Fortune spins, and now we get this Black Death that is just all around. So people were infected. It's believed that there were ticks or lice on the rodents. The rodents rode on the ships. Ships at that time, especially merchant ships, were dirty. And so by the time ships got to different ports, there could be many infected people who had been on it, might have died from it, and then when they go into the ports, they're spreading it, okay? Because it was an airborne disease. Now, I'm going to show you this picture because a lot of you will say, oh yeah, I've seen that before. You seen that guy? If you've ever seen that guy, he represents the doctors of the Black Plague. okay? They would wear these beak-looking things, and you can see that when you view it. But they wore those beak masks, again, because the disease was spread by air, so it was longer for the air to get to their nose. They'd also put herbs at the bottom of it, thinking that it would, again, purify the air before it went to them. And if you really look at this picture, you'll see head to toe, the doctor is covered. There's nothing showing, and he would carry around, like a stick to kind of poke people to see, like, do you have the Black Plague? If you don't like gross things, don't ever look up the bubonic plague, because it is nasty. Would never have shown you anything, but I do know some of you like to look it up. So on your own risk. But basically, the bubonic plague would show itself in forms of big kind of boils. And they could start anywhere on the body. And people were very targeted, obviously, if they had this, because normally you would not survive if you caught the bubonic plague. So people were trying to hide it. If they, if it was on their arms, if it was on their neck, they would cover. And this is another reason how the bubonic plague spread. Because basically you didn't want to be known to have it. Some people did survive, but the majority of people did not survive. You're living in a time where people are cramped again on the manors or in the towns now that have been revived. And so this is just spreading, and there's not the great medical care. There's a lot of sewer. They don't have the running water in medieval Europe. And so this disease just spreads. But the doctors would go out and try and help, or at least say, you have it, there's nothing we can do. So here's the effects of the Black Plague. First thing, every social rank lost people. Disease has no boundaries. Disease does not care if you were the king, if you were a knight, if you were a serf. So, of course, if you're more wealthy, you might be able to escape the towns, the cities, but it didn't mean you were immune to the Black Plague. So vast numbers from every single one of those rankings in the feudal system lost a great deal of people, okay? The one kind of benefit, if you will, about the Black Plague was that serfs, those people who were at the bottom of the feudal system, actually had a bit of leverage here. Because so many of them were dying, there weren't a lot of serfs or people to work the land. And so these serfs started to demand more money to the lords and say, hey, listen, if you need me, which you do, for you to make money, I'm going to need a little bit more. And they also then didn't care if their lord was like, yeah, I'm not going to, because they would then leave. Before, the mindset was, I'm a serf, I'm bound to this land, I must obey my lord, he is the one whose land this is, I am basically property. With so many deaths, though, the serfs got a voice. The serfs advocated for themselves, and they said, you don't want to pay me? I'll go down the road and he's going to give me money. And so now we start having a better life for some of those very bottom of the society structure. A lot of the clergy were lost because, again, priests would go into the homes. There were doctors, but you know that monks in monasteries and nuns in convents, they often helped the sick, and so they were there going in, helping or trying to help, and so about 40% of clergy were lost during the Middle Ages. And that brings up another kind of problem, because now you have uneducated people filling the church positions. And then again, pre-plague, everyone was in that feudal system. It was fixed at birth. You were either the king or part of royalty. You were a lord who had a lot of money. You were a knight. You were a peasant, or you were a serf. And the Black Death just wiped all of those separations out. And it started people again to think, like, why were we living this way? Why were we having people literally own us? They started to criticize many of those medieval traditions and start to think, you know, we've seen different things, right? We know that their eyes were open during the Crusades. We had a revival of life. We have our own culture. We've built things. We've advanced things. Why would we want to go back to a dark, structured, no brightness sort of life? So we really get, with the Black Plague, we get the end of these Middle Ages. Literally, the Black Death killed the feudal system. It was weakened with guns and cannons, but the Black Death literally killed the feudal system because these people were seeing for the first time that we don't have to live so structured. And so then you stop with the ways of life that the Middle Age culture had created, and you get to the arrival of what we now know as the modern world. We know that exploration had already started before this, and we know that it's going to continue. And as I've said before, you know, this is the Middle Ages because this is the middle time between your ancient world and your modern world. And your modern world starts with the Age of Exploration, because now we're going to have those explorers mapping out the world, coming to new worlds, the northern Americas. We're not going to get to learn about the Mayas, Incas, Aztecs. That's just not going to fit in unless you want some more work next week, which I don't think you do. So, but they were already established in South America. So when we're talking about discovering America, we are talking about North America, because a lot of South America was already established, and Central America there. So that's it. The Middle Ages ends, exploration starts, modern world comes, and it all happened because of a deadly disease known as the bubonic plague. So have a wonderful summer. I hope to see you in person next year in the halls of Walnut Creek. I hope you come and see me, say hi. And with that, have a wonderful summer.